Well, welcome everybody. We are back. We are here. Another episode of Crypt I've been thinking, and I just want to welcome you all once again. Joining me, we have an amazing guest lined up. I'm super excited to have them on, and I'm just really been looking forward to this interview. It's going to be a great one, guys. So thank you for taking the time to come and check it out. And before I get my guest on, I just usually do this at the end of my show, but for some reason I think people don't actually stick through right till the exact end as soon as I sign off with my guests. So I want to add it at the beginning because I've had people ask. Definitely, I'm doing radio 3 days a week now, so please, guys, check me out on my radio show. I'm doing it 3 days a week, and that is at Revolution Radio, which you can get to by going to freedomslips.com. And I am on Saturday evenings with my amazing co-host, Jonathan Wright, and we are on from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time in Studio B. That is the Crypt and Jonathan show. Amazing. I think we just did episode 12 last Saturday, which was an amazing guest, and we're getting a lot of really cool feedback from people. They really seem to be enjoying the shows and the guests that we're getting on. You can also find me on my own show, which is Crypt I've Been Thinking, and I am on Monday evenings from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and I am Studio A. And also lots of great stuff going on there. We talk about a lot of different things. We talk about natural law, the occult, order followers, what's going on in our world, how we got to where we are in our world. So definitely check it out, guys. And your support means everything to me and to Revolution Radio, because that is about the only place where, you can go and there's no censorship. You can talk about what you want. Freedom of speech is alive and well, and it's just so powerful, I think, radio, and something that I think people should start looking into, because you don't have to worry about being censored like we are on these other platforms that we're using right now. And I've known so many people that have lost channels, had videos taken down, and it's just getting really hard to put the truth out there. So I just want to thank you guys for supporting, and please check it out. I'll leave a link in the description so you can check it out. And then also, if you're a music fan, I'm also at Revolution Radio on Friday evenings, and that's just a show where we have a little fun. We play some music, and it's a couple hours of just relaxing, and you can find me there. That's in Hawk's Nest, and that is also Revolution Radio, and it goes on from about 8:30 p.m. till whenever. Usually goes till about 11 o'clock. There's not really a time limit, but a lot of fun. You got to take some time to have a little bit of fun. So that's just a fun show I do. But wanted to get that out of the way, guys. So thank you for putting up with that little bit of an intro. But now let's get to my guest, just to let you know a little bit about them. I did find them on the One Great Work Network, which was created by Mark Passio. And please check it out, guys. There's well over 50 content creators now doing some amazing work there. I'll make sure I leave a link also in the description so you can check it out. Please go, One Great Work Network. I also have my information up there. I just recently got invited there, so I'm slowly getting my information up there. You can also find this gentleman's work even on YouTube. You can find it, David Greenberg, Freedom Vibe. That's on YouTube, guys. I'll leave a link. And he's got other platforms, but I will let him tell you all about it at the end of the interview. And great stuff going on there. He's done amazing videos. Some of the videos he's done they're called It's All You, The Real Price of Knowledge, The Order Followers, What is Natural Law, and there's so many more incredible interviews there and videos. So please, guys, go and check out his YouTube channel and his website. Links will always be in the description, guys. So without further more ado, I want to go ahead and welcome my guest for the first time to the Crypt. Very excited. Welcome, David Greenberg, to the show.
Thanks so much, Crypt Rick. It's great to be here for the first time, and I really appreciate you inviting me here.
Oh, I've been looking forward to it, as I said at the beginning. I love your videos. I really do. And I resonate with them because a lot of the stuff you say, I just know to be true, and it makes an impact. And I think you explain it very well too. And I like that sometimes you're very blunt about it too. I mean, I think the time of sugarcoating a lot of what's going on in the world, we're well past that. And in my opinion, is how we got here. It's kind of like tiptoeing and not really addressing it head on. So, I mean, I could start anywhere with you, but I figured, I would ask you, how did humanity get to where we are? What is going on? Because it's crazy to me that I can't understand how people are just kind of going along to get along. They're not really fighting back, and I just want to get to start. How do you think we got to where we are?
Yeah, that's a very important question, and one that really we should each be asking ourselves in addition to looking out into the world. And I am, I guess the way I would answer that is for most of my life, I was basically contributing to the manifestation of and the continuity of slavery in the world and the suffering. Obviously, I was born, only about 52 years ago, so I didn't create the world the way it is. But basically, coming into this world, the way I acted and the way I behaved, and there are many reasons for that, but ultimately my behaviors, my choices of behaviors were just contributing to keep that going, and rather than revealing truths, rather than helping to solve problems. And I think a lot of that's by design, but ultimately we are beings with free will, and we are beings with the capacity to grow and evolve. I think in a lot of ways I'm not any different from a lot of people. In fact, I'm really nobody. I'm just an ordinary guy who didn't have a very spectacular life. And I was just, what I have going for me is the same thing that you and everybody else do, is I had the ability to evolve. And at some point through my own suffering, through basically suffering the consequences of my own choices, I only had to be hit over the head a certain number of times before I realized, hey, I can keep doing the same thing and getting the same result, or I can start to wake up and connect the dots and learn what I need to learn to actually evolve and become a better person. And so I chose that latter path. And that basically, by making that choice, the universe or creation started putting in front of me more and more knowledge, more understanding, other people who are on a similar path, and just allowed me to discover the things that I needed to in order to keep evolving, keep growing.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And I was the kind of, yeah, definitely. I relate to how you said, like, you kind of just, some people just got to kind of get hit over the head once and you really start to wake up. And other people, they seem you can beat them over the head forever and they're really stubborn. And I've run into those people in my own life where they just will not listen. And it gets really frustrating. I think that I'm sure we all go through that at first when you kind of start getting this knowledge. You just want to go out and you want to tell everybody and you kind of just spew it all out to them. At least I did. And I got less than a welcome reception by most people. Like they were just, and I learned very quickly that we're all at different levels. And that I think people have to realize when they start talking to people, you got to kind of gauge where people are because we don't know their past traumas. We don't know what they've lived through. We don't know a lot about them in most cases. And so you kind of can't just go at them. So I found the best way to do it is to kind of gauge where they are and then kind of slowly plant the seeds and talk to them instead of just hitting them with it. I mean, did you go through that phase where you were kind of hitting against people? Because I know I do. I still do, actually.
Oh, I could tell you stories. I mean, one quick story. This was 2009, so just to put it in perspective, so that's about 13 years ago. And I went through several layers of awakening, but at that time, we could definitively say that I wasn't truly fully awakened because I didn't have a real understanding of natural law, of objective morality, but I had enough of an understanding to know that there was a lot of evil and wrongdoing being done in the world, and that things were not always as they were presented. So I had that level of awareness. But it was funny because I traveled to Mexico. I basically sold off my business, and felt like I needed to travel to get out of the world, get out of my environment. And this was the time when the swine flu scam was going on, and I could see right through it. But my very poorly executed strategy at the time was to publish a lot of conspiratorial information on Facebook. Facebook even existed at that time. And the funny thing was, check out the irony in this. I got hosted by a couple families in Mexico, and one of the families, I didn't realize this when they invited me, but the father of my friend, she's the one who invited me, and then the father, he was actually apparently a very bigwig executive in a pharmaceutical company. So, and one of them was actually responsible for distribution of a large amount of the vaccines that at the time were being distributed for swine flu. So,
Okay.
this is 13 years ago, and I guess she saw my posts on Facebook, which were very vitriolic and kind of very angry, and it was an extremely awkward and uncomfortable moment staying at her house because we had a dinner, and basically her father just kind of, you know, sneeringly confronted me about it. Like, you know, you do know that I'm a top executive in such and such company, and I mean, the details are not important,
Hmm.
but you can imagine how small he made me feel in that moment. That my strategy is completely backfired. I basically was just left in a position where I was like, you know, having dinner with the enemy, and I was shitting all over the bed that they gave me.
Right.
Right.
Yep. Wow. Yeah. That is a crazy story, and I couldn't imagine how you felt, kind of sitting there going, okay, like this isn't a good thing. Like, but you know, I mean, I guess yeah, that'd be a tough one. I don't even know. I couldn't imagine how you felt, kind of like being in that situation. But I mean, at least I mean, Facebook back in those days, at least you could post stuff. I mean, now as I was saying at the beginning of the show, it's getting tough to get information out there. I talk to content creators every day, as I'm sure you do, that are losing their channels, they're losing their platforms, and that's why I was kind of promoting radio at the beginning, because at least at Revolution Radio, where I have my shows, there's no freedom of speech is alive and well. We can talk about whatever. There's no limits on it. We don't have to censor ourselves. We don't have to use code words. We don't have to use any of that. So I think that's to me that's a very powerful tool to use that I think a lot of people maybe think is old school. And I just talk to a lot of people that really enjoy listening to a podcast. They don't need it in video format. I love doing video format as much as probably you do, but I mean, I try to hit, you know, if I could do video and audio like I do on the radio show, I think that's great. Have you had any problems with videos being pulled down or anything? Or are you kind of like me? I'm kind of trying to stay below the radar, but they've got me a couple times.
Yeah, that's a great question. I very little. I've had maybe one video taken down on YouTube,
That's
and
good. Yeah.
uh, and I think Instagram blocked my ability to upload for like a couple of months. There was no notice or advisory. Other than that, I haven't had any issues. In fact, the same video that was taken off of YouTube, I was able to publish pretty much everywhere else.
Really?
I
Yeah.
think one of the reasons why I have not had an issue, and I don't really give a lot of thought to this, is because philosophically, or my approach to the great work is I'm always focusing on as much as possible on the solution. I'm
Hmm.
always
Right.
focusing as much as possible on teaching the core principles and going to root causal factors, specifically teaching natural law, and helping people to understand what that actually means, what is objective morality, and the why behind the what, rather than focusing on the manifestations. So, whereas other content creators, and I'm not necessarily saying that they're wrong for doing this, whereas other content creators will spend a lot of time maybe talking about, you know, shutting down farms in the Netherlands, or Elon Musk rolling out Neuralink, or even things that are more serious, like the child pedophilia rings that are
Yep.
going on, you know, worldwide and have been going on for a long time. Not to mention the fact that the vaccines are not what they say they are, things like that. So I don't spend a lot of time talking about the problem, or as I think Mark Passio is the one who used this term, describing the prison.
Right. Yeah.
And I don't call out people specifically, at least not by name. Sometimes I'll flash an image on my videos.
Yeah, that's
I
great.
seem to be able to get away with that rather than say mentioning names. I don't mention a lot of names. I've called out a few people, but I put all their pictures on there, but I rarely mention them by name. And
Smart. Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. I don't know what these psychopaths think of me. Maybe they just don't care. Maybe they think that I'm wasting my time trying to teach these principles. But I don't seem to be enough of a threat to them, that really, except for that one video. This was like almost 9 months ago that it
Right.
happened.
Right.
So yeah,
That's
it's not really
cool.
been an issue for me.
That's really cool. Yeah, I did. It is true. Like some content creators seem to be able to like slip through the radar, and then you get others that I've seen lose channels for videos that make no sense why they got even pulled or why they got a strike on their channel. So I don't know what their madness is on these platforms, what their algorithm is, or what they're looking for. The only video I got ever actually really, I got one of the rare times I actually got a video pulled. I got it pulled before I even premiered it because I premiere my videos, and I was premiering an interview I did with, when we were talking about chemtrails and mercury poisoning, and I was so new back then, David, that I just put right in the title like, we are breaking down mercury poisoning and chemtrails, and I didn't even get a past premiere. They just wouldn't even let it play. So that's when I learned very quickly, like, you gotta be a little sneaky, kind of like how you word things and that. So I don't know what their method of madness is to it, but very interesting. I'm glad that I love the way you do your videos and you put those little images up. I think that's probably what is helping. And you're not mentioning names and kind of staying, but you're still getting the great information out there, which is what I think we're all trying to do, which is amazing. So congrats to that, man. I mean, I hopefully you keep flying below the radar, but getting this information out because it's so important, especially now. In my opinion, it's just we're in a lot of trouble here, and I think that would be a good kind of segue to kind of talk about. Like I truly believe that we're in the mess that we're in because of this false belief that people have an authority and order followers. And I know that's a very broad brush I'm painting, but I would like to kind of talk to you about that because I've watched the videos you've done on it, so I know you know about it, obviously. And I definitely saw that during what's happened in the last 3 months or 3 years. Definitely with order, like people just going along to get along, not questioning authority. And so, what are your thoughts? Like, I mean, like let's talk about order followers and this belief in this false belief in authority that people seem to really buy into.
Yeah, the belief in authority, which is a religious belief because it's not based in truth, this is one of the most insidious and dangerous beliefs that exists in our reality. And it is basically foundational to keep the system of control and slavery going and to keep people limited and prevent us from achieving our true potential. If someone is new to the topic, or actually wherever you are, because I read this book recently and it's been very enlightening for me. A book that I can strongly recommend that's only about 100 pages that can really, really explain this in a very elegant way is a book called The End of All Evil by Jeremy Locke.
Right. Yeah.
It's a book that was published in only about 17 years ago, so it's not a very old book. Like I said, you could download the PDF if you don't want to actually buy the physical book, or you could buy a physical copy. But I would say anybody who cares at all about freedom, who cares at all about helping us to transcend what's going on in the world, I would definitely read that book. I would prioritize that, because if you want to understand, the real battle between authority versus sovereignty, and what is really going on in a spiritual level, without, dissecting it into 10,000, small details, then this book is really, really a heavy hitter. So that would be my first advice. But, just synthesizing what I've learned from that and from other sources is that everything that is wrong in the world is basically trying to limit us as human beings and trying to put us into a box, put our consciousness into a box, say that we're not really that great, we're flawed, we're sinful, we're this, we're that, we're bad by nature, evil by nature. We need to be controlled, we need to be corralled like animals. We just don't have it within us. And this is, of course, all lies, but it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy because we are by nature very easily programmed, or unfortunately, very often easily fooled and duped. It becomes basically a self-fulfilling prophecy. And when we start to believe it, we literally generate a reality where we are slaves because we believe that is the natural state.
Absolutely right. Well said, man, and I agree too. The book that you mentioned, it definitely. I remember Chris Jansen recommended it because that's basically what his podcast and it started his whole podcast. That's his inspiration. Amazing book, and like you said, it's a quick read too. I mean, it's a must. I can't. I'm like you can't recommend it high enough. So definitely, people check it out. It's not a long book, but it's going to really get you in the right vein of what we're talking about, and it's an amazing book. So yeah, definitely recommend that. I second your opinion on recommending that. I'm telling you, this belief in authority really it always has bothered me, and I was questioning authority, David, even back when I was in public school. I just never bought into that. I would say to my parents, like, why, what gives them the right? I just remember saying that all the time. Like, who said that they can make these rules? Like, and who gave them the right to make these rules? And why do I have to listen to them because you because you told me I had to? And I just remember as a young person, I was very confused by that. I just it didn't feel right to me, and very dangerous. And I think that's, like I was saying, that's how we got here, is this belief in authority, and people have really bought into it and don't really even question it. And I just think it's so dangerous when you just kind of blindly, because you have this false belief in authority, you just kind of do what they tell you. Very dangerous in this mindset, I think.
Yeah, and there is a flip side to that. I think this is the part. This is why in a lot of my videos, I touch on, the false belief in authority, but I also keep coming back to the fact that the flip side of that, as it were, is the self sovereignty or the
Right.
self ownership, because
Right.
there is a true authority, just like there is a true religion, and the true authority is self authority, authority over self. In other words, we control our own minds, we control we are the leader of our thoughts. We can't necessarily stop thoughts from coming in, but we can choose how we act on the thoughts and feelings that we have, and we can make choices either to act on them or to not. So this is the true authority, and this is the only authority that is actually legitimate within the scope of being a human being.
Mm-hmm.
So, and beyond that, the only other authority, of course, is the authority of creation, which are the principles of creation itself, which give us, the framework in which we grow and evolve. And those are obviously immutable rules that we can never escape, but they're also there for our benefit, so that when we actually take responsibility for ourselves and our behaviors, and this is the part that's missing from our society in general. For example, my parents never sat me down and explained to me, this is right, this is wrong, and if you make the right choices, you're going to have better outcomes. If you make bad choices, then you're going to suffer, and you're also going to cause other people to suffer. So, and then people are going to want to take control of your life because you're not taking control of your own life. So, no one ever sat down and explained to me the foundational aspects that would have, not only prevented me from believing in or thinking authority was a good thing, external authority, but would actually allow me to fill in the gap of being fully responsible for myself, so that there wasn't literally no need for any kind of external control, because I would already be in full sovereignty of myself, and I would already be fully self-responsible for my own actions. And so this is, I think, one of the root causal factors of why the belief in authority persists so much, is that people aren't growing up spiritually. People are in adult bodies, and I can tell you, I'm 52, and even as recent as like 2, 3, 4 years ago, I was not fully. I could not call myself a spiritual adult. I was not taking full responsibility for all of my actions. In fact, I was, still engaged in some degree of magical thinking, like I could get away with things that weren't really appropriate, and somehow there wouldn't be a consequence. So this is the missing half, and this is why in so much of my content I hammer this point that we need to understand the objective morality. We need to take full responsibility for ourselves and our actions at all times, and that's a great thing. And life is dangerous. There are risks, but part of that is being able to learn and grow and learn from our mistakes.
I agree 100%. I'm kind of like, I was kind of like you too. I was spiritually fully awake. Not, pretty late in my life I got spiritually awake. I mean, but I was always somebody questioning and looking for knowledge, that's for sure. But it's really when you start taking, as you were saying, responsibility for your actions and your thoughts, and that was a key that you don't hear a lot of people. Well, back then you did. Now you're starting to hear a lot more about shadow work, and I see a lot more people kind of actually knowing what I mean when I talk about it. There's more people talking about it. But to me, that was the key foundation to build on. Like, so much so that's what I did my presentation on Funnel 2 on, because it was that life changing. And I've heard you talk about it in your videos too, the importance of it. And I think that's a great thing to talk about, because that was to me the foundation. I think that everybody needs to do is the work on themselves. And I think so many people are spending their time, and I was guilty of it for a long time, pointing the finger externally at everything else. You blame that thing, you blame that person, and you just blame, pointing the finger, but you never take the finger and point it squarely back at yourself. Because truly, people are in the mess that they're in most of the time because of their own actions, and it's a responsibility problem we have.
It's a big problem, and in an upcoming video that I haven't published yet, I'm going to talk a little bit about what I think about the importance of parenting and teaching. Now, I'm not a parent, but I can tell you my firsthand experience is being raised by parents who, like I said, there was not word number one about morality and right versus wrong, and not even word number one. It was never mentioned, except in passing. Like, as a kid, you experiment. I tried shoplifting once. I did things that I shouldn't have done, and I would get caught, and my parents would give me a scolding. They were wrapped in a context proactively of teaching this morality, and this is a big part of why. This is, again, what keeps generating and regenerating and perpetuating the reality of slavery and suffering is there is no early childhood education around morality, and why it's so important and why we need to be moral if we expect to ever be free, and why if we're immoral, and if we certainly don't understand what morality is, and we don't understand that it's basically equivalent to freedom. If we don't understand that largely as a society, as a civilization, then of course there's no way we're ever going to be free, because those who do understand it, and those who are manipulative, and those who are psychopaths, for example, they're going to want to take an advantage, and we'll have no defense against them because we just don't get it. They get it, and we don't get it.
Absolutely, right? Absolutely agree. And that's the thing that people have to realize, is that there is such a thing as objective morality, and there is such a thing as a right and a wrong, and there's no and that's a hard thing for people to kind of come to terms with. I mean, there is such a thing as truth, and you see it being twisted these days. Like everything's, that's how I know that we're under like a very satanic controlling, like we're being controlled by dark, I call them dark psychologists or dark psychologists, whatever you want to call them, but they definitely know what they're doing, and they know us better than anyone really knows ourselves. Most people don't even know themselves as well as they do, and they know how to play, to manipulate it, because they know it so well, and we're so busy fighting with each other that we're not even seeing the game that they're playing. Most people don't see it, and it's definitely it's a rough one. I mean, I get really upset when I think about it, because I see where we're at and what you're saying, and I totally agree that most people can't even tell you what a right is. Like, you just try it, guys. I'm serious. Go up and ask somebody to give you the definition, the correct definition of a right, and you're going to be surprised that most people can't even tell you what a right is. So what doesn't shock me now, David, is that no wonder we're losing our rights and our freedons when people can't even describe what they're defending. I mean, it's pretty easy to give.
If you don't know
up.
what you're defending,
right.
How can you defend it? Anybody can understand the simple logic that if you're going to defend something, you have to know what it is that you're defending and why you need to defend it.
Yep, absolutely. And it's scary when they can't give you the definition. You're just like, wow. Like, I mean, no wonder we're losing them. And people are just like, oh, well, whatever. And they don't realize the value in that. And that's how they kind of, I keep saying we've got to where we are, is they keep chipping away, taking a little bit away. And they're doing it now here in Canada. Now they're coming after our guns even more here in Canada. They just snuck in a bill, C-21, and which is just, they're snakes, man, in the government, I'm telling you, because it was for handguns, and then like at the 11th hour, 59th minute, they slipped in this little but, and then they're coming after any firearm that's a semi-automatic, which the list is endless, and there's a lot of hunters here in Canada. So now they're kind of backpedaling. They're kind of saying, oh, we might have overstepped a little bit, but they are definitely coming for our firearms. And, I don't see that many people in Canada even really fighting against this, and I'm just like, wow, like you're really going to give up something so important. And they don't want to have any sports shooting in Canada, so they away with that. And then the only reason you should have a gun is for hunting, And hell with self-defense or home defense or anything like that. Dangerous what we're dealing with here in Canada, and they're taking more rights.
And the correct response to that, as you know, Rick, is non-compliance.
Right.
Because when something is immoral, see, man's law can only be one of two things. It can only mirror, basically, or mimic, basically echo what natural law already says is truth. So in other words, it can basically be true.
Right.
That's usually a very, very small subset of man's law is actually based on truth. For example, the right to bear arms is principle of truth because it is a naturally born right. And then the only other thing that man's law can be is basically irrelevant or contradicting, in other words, going against natural law. And the only correct and moral response in those cases is to disobey, not obey those laws.
Right.
So what people in Canada should be doing, and this is true everywhere, not just in Canada, any country which is facing this, is they need to simply not comply, because they're getting people to comply because they get you to buy into the fact that you are a citizen of a country,
Right.
and you belong to a nation, and really it's just it's just a corporate entity that they've created, like a structure, and just like any corporation, it has rules, and you agree to participate in those rules. And when you sign up, meaning you agree to participate, you essentially are agreeing to go by all the rules, even rules that will go against your best interests. So by being a citizen, in other words, an employee of this corporation, like if you go work for Microsoft, for example, or a large corporation, they can tell you as an employee you can't bring a gun into their facilities, even though you may have a natural right to defend yourself. And you must agree to that if you want to be the employee, because that's their rule. That's the rules of their system. So it is a system. So the problem is that Canadians or Australians or any country in the world, the correct response when these entities are asking us to violate, to basically strip ourselves of our own rights and violate our own naturally born rights, the answer is simply no. I'm not going to comply. Yeah. I'm not participating in your fraud. I'm not part of your system. I'm not going to do anything that will, basically remove my natural rights. I don't agree to anything that limits me. Again, going back to the idea of limitation. But on the flip side is I agree to be responsible. Like, in other words, if I am going to own a firearm, of course, I'm going to be fully responsible for that firearm and for the consequences of owning and using that firearm at all times, including any potentially adverse consequences.
Exactly.
But I'm fully responsible for it. Whatever happens, I take full ownership of it. So that is the correct response. And if the majority or even a large number of people, certainly more than today, do that, then these very, very small group of people that is running the governments and organizations, what are they going to do in the face of billions of people? There's nothing they can do.
Yep.
Right.
Absolutely, yeah. What are they going to do? And I know a lot of people are hopeful. But they're like, well, when they vote in the next prime minister, they're going to kind of like try to get it thrown out. And I'm like, the government never gives back when they take something. They very, very. I don't think they ever give it back. And
you'll never find the solutions in the institutions of the world.
Exactly, and that's what I try to tell people. And then, and it's nefarious what they're doing, and because they wouldn't have snuck it in that little but at the end where they added all the semi-automatics in. They just kind of slipped that in really covertly and didn't want to under the rug kind of thing. And I'm like, that's how they know what they're doing. I mean, they that's why they did that. They didn't want to make that open at the very beginning, because then they would have caught shit from people.
Well, they're afraid.
Yeah.
In the end, they're like fearful little children, because they know that once humanity awakens, metaphorically and actually, they don't stand a chance. If the vast majority of human beings were fully sovereign and recognized their birthright and our true sovereignty, then obviously being armed, they wouldn't stand a chance, and they would be gone. Many of them would be removed from the world immediately, which would be the correct response. And those who remained, who tried to encroach on people's rights, they wouldn't stand a chance. They'd be like it'd be like brushing off a fly, or a flea or a mosquito. Yeah. That would be the analogy.
I totally agree. And I just had an interview I was doing with somebody. And we were talking about people just have to learn the most powerful word that people have seemed to forgot, the word no. Like just a
Yep.
not, like no, like I'm not doing that. And that is such a powerful word, and I think people have to take that word back and start just saying no. I know I do. When they want me to wear a mask during this whole, I can't talk about as open as I normally do, guys, so I got to be a little covert, but you guys know what I'm talking about. I just said no, I'm not doing it. And if I can't go in your store, then I'll go somewhere else. And I stood by that, and I didn't back down, and I said no. And same with the whack, you know what I mean? I said no to that too, and I've stood my ground on it. And there's power in that word, and that is what they don't want people to really clue into, is like there is power in that word. And I love the way that you said that. That you just have to kind of say enough's enough. I mean, wow.
Yeah. When the whole Masquerade Ball started a couple of years ago, I knew immediately it was complete bullshit.
Yep.
And I was working in an office at the time. I was in Colombia, in South America, and I was renting an office. It was very cheap, actually. I was renting an office because I was still working as a sales professional at that time when everything kind of shut down. And I remember the owner of the office. So everybody got sent home because they weren't allowed to. They were complying with the rules that they couldn't open up the offices and nobody could work there. But the owner was insisting that I need to continue to pay my rent during the time of, closure.
Right.
And he was saying, and we had a very confrontational call, a phone call. I remember this, and he kept using his language, for the greater good kind of language. I had never seen this side of him before. It's interesting how these kind of events polarize people, and you can kind of see where people fall. And I kept saying to him, "No, you're not. I don't care. You can make up 1,000 excuses. If I can't use the office, there is no payment.
Right.
That's the end of the story. And you can tell me that you can say the same thing over and over again, but if I can't use the office, you're not getting paid. End of story. That's the agreement." And he kept trying it. I was like, "Nope. It's not going to happen." So I just nullified our agreement because it was not based on any. We no longer had an agreement because they were trying to charge me for something that I couldn't even use. So I didn't even cancel the contract. I don't think it was even a contract. I think it was just a month to month. But I mean, just imagine that. And this was even before I even fully grasped and even started to learn, natural law and start to dive into the occult. But just intuitively, I knew it was complete bullshit. That someone, and this is what people need to stand up for themselves. So this kind of emphasized what you were just saying about saying no. I said no to this guy. It doesn't matter how on friendly terms we were. It doesn't matter if I had, spent money on his services in the past. If he was going to cross the line, the answer was no. And you're absolutely right, Crypt Rick. You got to say no when it's appropriate.
Exactly. Yeah, I totally agree. And I tell people that all the time. There's power in that word. And it's a word they don't like to hear. Absolutely. I know. I mean, like they kind of throw them off guard too when you say no. Like I'd go into a store and they'd be like, "Gotta wear a mask," and I'd be like, "No, I don't. No, I'm not doing it." And they're just like, "Well, you have to," and it really throws them off. And I mean, how many horrible things have happened in the world for the sale of greater good? That's what they kind of, and that was what really was going on, at least where I live, was the guilt of not going along with the program. Like people really, and it wasn't just government officials that were doing it. It was people in my own family. It was my own friends, my neighbors. Like it really opened my eyes in the last 3 years. It really did. Like I knew that the world was in a bad place. I knew that people were lost. They were spiritually bankrupt, morally bankrupt in a lot of cases. But I didn't realize that the power they had over the people. And I always try to remember, because people seem to forget with time. They very sure, like people are like goldfish now. They kind of just, the next shiny thing, they're right on it. And I keep bringing up to people, like they shut the world down. They shut the world down. Like this wasn't like for a day or a week, or they shut the world down for a long time, destroyed many lives, people's businesses, their livelihoods, families ripped apart.
People were
Marriage
murdered. People
murdered.
were
Like,
murdered. They were intentionally killed
yes,
with not necessarily at gunpoint, like we would think of,
right,
a thief or a common thug who would murder somebody, with a gun. But
right.
they were murdered in all different ways through withholding basic necessities,
Yep.
uh, through quote unquote euthanasia, which is not anything good at all,
Mm-hmm.
and so on and so forth, and just other, probably some advanced technologies and weaponry that is not fully understood. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I mean, so many people's lives were taken
Oh my God, yeah.
wrongfully as a result of these actions.
Exactly, and I try to tell people that's the power that this mind control that's going on. In that this is the level that we're at. Like we're at a level that the mind control is so bad that they could do this to the whole world, and I'll never forget that. That is so ingrained in me that the power that they had over, and that's why I started doing my radio show and everything. It was really a wake up time for me. Like, wow, they really got their act together, and we're up against somebody that like an enemy that knows what they're doing, and the mind control is out of control. I mean, you see it everywhere. I'm sure you do. I see the war on masculinity going on drastically all over. I just see so much evil going on in this world, and it really bothers me that more people don't see it, or they just choose to ignore it. I think and it's a sad state that we're in, and I just really believe that most people are are spiritually bankrupt and they're morally bankrupt. And I keep trying to tell people, David, that we're in this is a spiritual war. We're not. This isn't going to be like a quick fix, or it's not going to be a voting, get the next person in the office, and they're going to change the world. This is
No.
a war of our spirit. I don't know a better way to
Yeah.
put it.
Our souls are on the line because that's what they're
Absolutely.
after. They want the human soul because they know how infinitely valuable and powerful we are truly because of our connection to the source and our roles as co-creators of this reality. So
Mm-hmm.
they want it all, and the only way that they can get away with that is to completely hoodwink us. First of all, to completely confuse people about what is right versus wrong.
Yep.
That was like the first domino, because if people understand what is right and what is wrong at the core foundational level, then even a common thug is not going to be able to get away with much
Mm-hmm.
in terms of influencing someone's life, much less people who are much more sophisticated. People, so this is why, again, the solution is, and this is the video I just published today. It's called "Natural Law is the Answer," and in that
Nice.
video, explaining that that is the answer. We need to start with understanding the core principles of this occult knowledge, which includes objective morality, which includes our true value. What is actually going on inside of us and in the universe, in the world around us, and then we need to start, as you said, start to say no to that which does not align with or serve our growth, our evolution, or that which seeks to harm us. And of course, we also don't harm others. It's so simple. It's so
It
simple.
is.
And when we grasp these simple concepts, literally their entire their entire house of cards just falls apart. It just
Absolutely.
comes crashing down in a spectacular way. That's why I like what Max Egan says on a lot of his videos, where he says it's all about non-compliance. You just
Mm-hmm.
stop complying with what psychopaths are asking you to do.
Yep. 100%. And that's it's and I agree with you 100%, David. It's like common sense. It really
It's
is, and
common
then
sense.
the fact that you got to explain it to people, it really shows where we're at. Like it's like this should just be we should just common sense knowledge. Like don't harm other people. Like why like don't harm other people, don't infringe on their rights, don't take their rights, don't take their freedoms. But people have they've really brainwashed people into thinking that there's people that are allowed to do this and that they have the authority, supposedly been given this authority, which nobody can even give them this authority, but they've convinced people that it's necessary. A lot of the people I talk to, and I like to ask if you run into these people, but I try to talk to people in person as much as I can because I get a better feel, and I think it's more personal. I really think technology's got good points because it's allowing this interview to happen. So I mean, there's good things, and we are both getting information out there, so that's a good thing. But you lose. There's still not the same as being in person when you're with physical presence of somebody talking and exchanging ideas, and I try to do that as much as I can. And a lot of people I talk to, they kind of know there's some messed up things going on in the world. Yeah, the government does some shady things, but we need them. I mean, the world would just fall apart if we didn't have government. Like, who's gonna, like, how can we? They can't even fathom a world without authority and government. They can't see. They can't picture it without government. They can't police. Military. They can't vision it. That's how brainwashing. Like how deep it goes. Have you run into these people that just can't see, like the forest through the trees?
Yeah, every day. And I may take a slightly different perspective than you do. I think the way I look at it is I do also look at it like two different audiences. So there's the online audience versus, say, meeting and interacting with people
Good point. Yep.
one-on-one or in groups. And I take different approaches with them and I look at them different ways. So, for example, on my platform, in terms of the video content and the teaching that I do, I think this is very important because I want to get, even at the risk of repeating myself, even at the risk of often, all my videos, in some way or another, you can boil them down to, teaching the same core principles,
Exactly.
right?
Yep.
It's not,
Yep.
the message is not varying. It's just different ways of sharing it. So, given how much of a number these advanced ancient psychologists have done on humanity, we do. I think that if we expect to get out of this mess, we absolutely do need to get the message out, amplify it as much as possible. So
Agreed.
this is why I was very appreciative that you invited me on the show, for example. This is why I do all the videos that I do. I'm sure this is a big motivation for you and others, and we frankly need more people doing this, each in their own unique way. So that part is super important, and it's going to be repetitive, but it's education or re-education.
Mm-hmm.
When I'm dealing with people one-on-one, I don't really look at it as an opportunity to re-educate because I don't know what's going on with that person. And I'm also recognize that, for example, it took me many, many decades to fully awaken,
Right.
And I had to go through a lot of suffering in order to do that. And every person is unique. So rather than looking at it as an exercise, well, what can I do to try to break through those layers? I look at my interactions with people as more of a sensing the temperature of where we're at. Whether it be situationally, where are we at? How far behind are we? How deeply entrenched are people in their ego-driven thinking? So I use it as a way to sample, which then often inspires me, to create videos talking about, specific scenarios that came up. And then in terms of helping those people, what I would often do is just use a very Socratic approach of asking them questions. Mm-hmm. That help them to see potentially, if they have the consciousness to do it, the error, where their thinking is breaking down, where it's illogical, where they're actually condoning immorality. But I do it in a way where they come to the conclusion themselves by asking them good questions, rather than trying to shove anything down their throat or, I'll be very aggressive and direct. I'll be very assertive and direct on my videos. Maybe a little bit more of a soft touch with people one-on-one because I want to, my goal is always to leave them with just enough of a door opener that it gets the wheels turning a little bit in their mind. So that even if I'm long gone, maybe it's the next day or whenever, and they're sitting at home and they're like, wow, they start to think about the conversation we had and it could potentially open the door to something.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a great way to do it, is to get them to ask the questions. And like when they start asking, I find when they start asking the questions, it kind of like truth will just do it. Truth just does its own thing, right? Truth is going to come out, and once it's really important. That was a key for me too when I started actually asking myself the questions, and that was part of my shadow work. Was I really started being honest, and that's key too, is brutally honest. When you're doing this, if you're going to lie to yourself, then there's no point even starting. You have to be brutally honest, and so asking the questions is definitely what got everything rolling, kind of thing. And I think that's a great approach that you're taking, and I get it. I mean, it's a tough one. I ask a lot of content creators that. I'm like I always kind of gauge, like, what are you guys going through? Like I find sometimes but then I run into people that are really receptive to it, and they're almost there, and then you kind of talk to them, and they really want to learn more. So I find both, but I do find a lot of people that because I try to talk about how we're in a slave system, and what's really interesting is a lot of the people I talk to and don't even really believe that we're in a slave system, and I think that's because they don't see the shackles, they don't see, the master kind of whipping them, kind of thing. Like, I mean, it's just not that, but the slavery that we're in now is so much more dangerous because you can't see it, and it's a I think it's because they're enslaving our minds, and
Yep.
and I just think that's what the people are probably having the problem. Like when you kind of say that we're living in a slave system, they don't see it that way. To me, it's like I just said, more dangerous because you can't see it.
Yeah, people are lying to themselves and thinking that it is right and good that certain people would dictate what we can and
Hmm.
cannot do, then they won't see the slave system because they're going to assume that that is the natural way of things. They're going to assume
Right.
that that by nature, certain people, by way of whatever criteria whatever fictitious criteria they make up in their minds, that those vicious rulers, shall we say, have the right to do that, um, just because they say they do, or because they're powerful, physically
Hmm.
armed, or whatever it is, whatever excuse comes up. But again, if someone understands the objective difference between right and wrong, and that we all have infinite rights and we all have the same rights, and everybody's infinitely valuable, but nobody's more valuable than anyone else.
Right.
A king is no more valuable than you and I. Uh, it's no more immoral to talk about killing a king who has committed wrongs than killing a common person who is coming to attack you, because
Right.
both are forms of self-defense. And just because the king has some kind of title doesn't mean he has more entitlement to life than a common thief, if he encroaches on people's rights. So,
Exactly.
and tries to harm them directly or through his minions. So, once that's why, again, I know I probably sound like a broken record in a way, but that's why I keep always going back to the importance of amplifying the core message of the natural law and the true nature of reality, because that is on our side. That is what is on our side. That is what is for us. It is for it. Creation wants us to flourish.
Right.
Creation doesn't. This is a possible reality because we have that power to create any kind of reality. So when we are confused about it and we don't understand it, or we allow ourselves to be deceived, then yeah, we're going to create a reality that's basically a hell, because because it's being generated by the alignment of those incorrect thoughts,
Right.
negative emotions, or emotions that are tied to those thoughts, and then acting incorrectly largely. So yeah, of course that's going to create a hell environment, or a hell planet, or a prison planet. I mean, that's the natural law outcome,
Yep.
and that's perfect. But once we start to, the flip side of that is, once we start to grasp, what are essentially very simple principles, they're not complicated at all. Once we start to grasp those simple principles, then all this, evil has to come up with elaborate schemes to sell itself. I mean, that's
Absolutely.
why everything that is evil in the world is always very complex, requires multiple institutions, requires a lot of machinations, requires entire armies of order followers to enforce it, because it's all fabricated.
Right.
And it has no, but it can't stand against core principles once they're understood.
Absolutely. That's perfectly said too. Yeah, the evil does. There's a lot of moving parts that they have to do to keep this illusion up, and to keep the lie going. Like, and I don't think I never even really thought of it that way. Till you just said that in a way, David. Like, it's really true. Like the lies that they got to tell and the illusions they got to pull, and it's a lot. They need a lot. It's a lot of moving parts, and they need a lot of people that are willing to go along with it. And because if, like we were saying earlier, if people just said no, like they realized what natural law was, true natural law. I'm not talking about Darwinism, because I talk natural law to some people and they automatically go to that. So I know that the master psychologists in the world have done their job well, because they kind of switch the meaning of words, and they make and people believe certain things. When you talk about Satanism, they think of people in a graveyard, sacrificing a cat or something like that in these robes, and that's not what I'm talking about. And so I get it. Like they've really done a great job at making people think one thing is another, and that's the another battle that's hard to go against, because it's really they've really done their job well. I just can't. I'm kind of like you, a broken record, but I'm trying to really let people know that what evil we're up against, and how they
Yeah.
can manipulate things. They're masters of it.
Yeah. I mean, if you were to ask me if you were to ask me today to sit down and watch even 30 minutes of CNN or
Oh
any of
my
these
God.
mainstream medias, you know what, if you were to like watch my reaction, I would be like pathological liars. These guys are paid these guys are paid liars. They're
Yep.
sitting there spewing out complete nonsense, irrelevant bullshit, absolute lies, ridiculous, irrelevant information, deception. I mean, I would, if I was required, if I forced myself to watch, even 30 minutes of it, at the end, I'd be like, how can anybody even think about taking these people seriously
Hmm.
when they're just so obviously, they're just illusionists, they're just sorcerers, they're trying to fill your head with all kinds of bullshit and nonsense and ridiculous, irrelevant information. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean,
Absolutely.
but
Yeah.
that's what we're up against because a lot of people that's their go-to source of information.
Yeah. People in my
That's
family
why
are guilty of that one. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
why I'm so passionate, and I try to, I'm only one person, and each of us is doing our part. But you know, uh, this is why, again, I don't have a podcast, but when you and others invite me on the podcast, I willingly come because it's a great opportunity to just speak the voice of truth
Right.
to more people,
Yep.
right?
Yeah, I agree. Anytime you can get out there and get information out there anyway is to me is a win, and
Yeah.
that's why and any different different platforms, as I was saying, you got video format, you got radio format. I think you got text format. They've all got their benefits, and they also got their drawbacks. But I mean, get the information out any way you can, and I'm glad that you brought that up, like CNN and that too, because I do have people in my own family that still watch they still watch the news every night, and I can tell they do because they're just spewing back to me what they've heard on like the news that night. They're in this constant state of fear. I mean, and now it's all about what's going on in the Ukraine, and I've been hearing about that from them, and how there's nukes going to be flying any day now. And I'm just like, wow, like you didn't learn your lesson with the happened over the last 3 years. You're still buying into this lie that they pull, and some people, I don't know, I just can't seem to get through to them to turn that TV off. Like, turn it off.
Everything that happened here's an interesting thought exercise. I want just imagine for a minute on that note. Imagine that nobody had Imagine that there was no CNN, there was no mainstream media news, or that most people didn't even have a television.
Hmm.
What do you think would have happened in 2020? What could they have actually been able to get away with versus what they were able to if nobody was watching television and certainly not mainstream news? Do you think that they would have been able to get away with things?
No. Nope.
Of course not.
Absolutely no. And I tell people that all the time. I'm like, my days never changed back then. I mean, when that started, because I just went outside. The world was the same. I wasn't living in fear. Nothing changed. It was only the people that were, like you said, going onto these news channels and letting them put this fear into them. And that we know the controllers love the fear card. They've always
I
got a
love it.
fear chamber, a bullet in the chamber. They got, like, it was the what's happened over the last 3 years. Now they got the Ukraine thing in there, and then after that, there's going to be another one, and it's just
And they're going to throw them at us
yep,
more and more quickly. That's why there's all this crazy stuff happening all at the same time.
yep,
You have this and that, and then they're change. The shortest ever prime minister of the UK, and then they have a new person come in. It's like a revolving door. It's just all this crazy stuff happening. Everything's happening all at once because they need to bombard us. But you're absolutely right. What you said is it's all based on fear because
yep,
uh, when in your life can you make really good, thoughtful decisions if you're afraid?
yeah, never.
When can you make high level? I'm not talking about like the bear is coming after you and you need to either fight the bear or run.
Right.
That's a very basic, understandable scenario where, yeah, you're going to have to make a very base level decision and it's going to determine the outcome of your life. So I'm not talking about, those kind of survival scenarios. I'm talking about looking forward, introspectively, making conscious choices about the design of one's life. When can those kind of decisions be made well? When can one make good decisions, sound decisions, when one is operating principally from fear.
Mm-hmm.
They can't.
Can't do
It's
it.
impossible.
Yep. You're in a reactive state. That's what they want you, and what do you see people around the world doing? They're in a reactive state constantly. They're not thinking, they're reacting, and
Yeah.
that's stoked by the fear. I mean,
Yeah.
like,
Do monsters really exist? I mean,
yep,
let's leave aside for a moment whether it's actually true that there are microscopic monsters that can attack our bodies.
mm-hmm.
But you know, isn't it worth sitting down and contemplating, whether the theory of monsters is actually true or not, or whether there may be an alternative way of understanding how reality works? The open-minded person would say, okay, that's one theory, monsters exist. Another theory is that they don't exist and it's something else,
Mm-hmm.
right? So
Great
is it
point.
not worth spending time to investigate that and determine what is actually true?
Yes, I agree. I would say so. Absolutely.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I'm not saying I have the answer. I'm not saying I agree with, whether monsters exist or not. I'm just saying it's certainly better to contemplate it and try to figure out the truth than to just assume that they exist.
Exactly. Yeah, asking questions is a great thing. That's why I love having these interviews and conversations. Excuse me, because I think a lot can be benefited. Like, a lot of benefit can come from having discussions respectfully, even if you don't have to agree on everything. I'm not saying that. I mean, it's just a discussion, and then you take from it what you can and what you want, and leave the rest. I'm good with that, and I think that's so powerful. Just a discussion like this and asking questions, and they're even making it. They were starting that back in 30 years, like many years ago when I was in public school. That they didn't even want you asking questions. I would ask questions in school. I went to a Catholic public school, as I've told many times on the show, which that was a lot of shadow work to get through that, because that was a whole episode of my life, the first 8 years of my schooling. And they, even back in those days, they didn't want me asking questions. Like, as soon as you started going against the grain, then you were reprimanded, you were in trouble. And so I can't even imagine how bad it is now in schools for children. Now I've had Will Keller on, I've had a few other people on my podcast talking about conscious parenting, and I'm fully aboard of get your children out of the school system. Like, do not leave them in the control. You're leaving your child in the control 90% of the time to a very demonic entity and institution.
100%. These are psychopathic institutions. So if you want your children to be indoctrinated by psychopaths to take on their mindset, then leaving them in public education. I say that respectfully. My mother was a public school teacher for many years. So, I mean, again, a lot of firsthand and secondhand experience. But yeah, I mean, today, for people, at least for the people who are probably watching or listening to our podcast, a good question is, do you want your children to be in indoctrination camps for psychopaths, or is there a better way to teach them? And hopefully, from your experience, you were talking about it, from my experience and our experience, we can't undo that. It's just part of our past, but hopefully we can learn from it and share what we learned from that experience.
Absolutely. Yeah, if I did have children, they would not be, I would not put them in the schooling system at all. Like, it would be like, that'd be the furthest thing from my mind. Just because I know I know the damage that can be done, and it's just really scary how people don't realize that. And homeschooling, I think, is the way to go. And the proper way to go. I mean, and you can teach the right way. I mean, it's really, and maybe that was one of the David. Maybe that was one of the great things about COVID. Maybe that could have been a plus, that parents maybe had to kind of step up and be parents. Like, their child they weren't allowed to send. And I remember seeing YouTube videos, David, of parents losing their mind that their children were home all day. Like, they were like, you have to open the schools, like, right away. Like, this is unconscionable.
Imagine that. They can't get rid of their kids
Yes.
fast enough. I mean, the insanity of it. I mean,
Yep.
If that doesn't wake people, even those very people, up to the fact that something is wrong, if they can't even be around their own children, I mean, holy F, holy mother of F. I mean, what have we gotten to? They should be precious. Like, those should be the precious moments. Of course, nobody should be forced to, under violence and coercion, to stay at home. But at the very least, to understand that if we can't even value as precious, the time we have with our kids, and take advantage of that,
Right.
then yeah, I mean that's a great litmus test right there to where we're at.
Yeah, yeah, and that's what I thought when I was seeing those videos. Like their parents were upset, and I'm like, wow, like you really don't really. I to me that was just crazy. I was just like, wow, like you think you'd be taking advantage of all the time that you have with your children and just spending time with them, getting them out in nature. Like that's the one thing I can say about my mother, and I'll always give her the credit for that. That she never wanted me in front of the TV, like very limited. Like she'd be like, okay, you can watch cartoons for half an hour on a Saturday, but after that, it was like, get your ass outside and go explore the world. She wanted me to go out and explore. She took me out to the nature and showed me things and educated me on things, and I that's so valuable. That's something my whole life I've always carried that with me, is her teaching me these things, and I now I've learned over the years that that's very rare, and that's something to be cherished because a lot of kids don't get that, and I just kind of thought everybody did, but I found that that a lot of kids don't get that, and I think that with technology it's getting even worse because now you see a lot of parents that they're letting devices raise their children. And I have friends that I can,
Yeah.
in my own life, that I see this. I would never call them out by name or anything like that, but they, from the time their child is up, they got a device in their hand, and and they got it in their hand when they're going to bed, and very scary that now they're that's kind of taking the parenting role. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, again, I think, but again, as at 52, I was obviously growing up as a young child in the late 70s and early
Me
80s, and
too. Yep.
there was some, we're the same age?
Yeah, well, I'm 50, so I remember you remember
Okay.
Atari, and
Yep.
all those horrible games.
Yeah, so we didn't have handheld phones, but there was
No,
some
God no.
technology. But I do remember, for example, both of my parents were working,
Mine
the
too.
classic two career family. And so there was a lot of stress, and they didn't really have a lot of time. They didn't really, or we could say it was their choice. They chose to prioritize working over parenting, and they could have parented. It would have meant downsizing, living in a slightly smaller
Right.
home, because we had an excessive sized home, and it was all part of the American dream.
Yeah.
So I think this has been going on for a long time. It's just it keeps morphing into new things. The core problem is the same: is that parents aren't conscious parents. They're not looking at their children as, oh wow, like this is a whole new being whose actions are going to literally have a foundational, literally going to shape the world to come. And
Very true.
no one person has shaped the entire reality, of course, but collectively altogether where we're headed, that's going to create the reality. So I do have, my children will make a difference, and they can make a difference,
Mm-hmm.
positive or negative. So oh my, I better, wow, that's a lot of responsibility. um,
Absolutely.
what can I do to improve not only my child's life but everybody's life that they come in touch with, and by extension the whole world? Well, I can teach them, morals. I can teach them, what it means to be a good person. What are the consequences of acting and behaving? I can teach them to value education and knowledge and learning, to value being teachable. In other words, not necessarily believing everything, but also not being rigidly skeptical and being open to learning new information. I can teach them to explore their creativity, and enjoy that process of trying new things, and not always getting it right, but experimenting in life,
Exactly. Yeah.
and encourage that, and actually enjoy the process of maybe even participating with them in that process. Like if they want to, my parents did a little bit of that. I mean, they got me an electric train set, which I enjoyed. I played around, tinkered around with electronics, like do it yourself. I learned how to put together computer systems. So I
That's
had a little
cool.
bit. I recorded comedy tapes as a kid,
Very cool.
you know. So there was they did encourage, it wasn't entirely discouraged, um, but it was just lacking. There was lacking that engagement. It was almost
Right.
like you do something wrong, you get punished, but other than that, I don't want to see you.
Yep. I get that. Yeah. And my parents were the same too as I got older. I did have my mom, and she was a stay-at-home mom till I got into high school. And then as soon as I went into grade 9, then she wanted to go get a job and stuff and kind of do her thing. So at least I got that first little bit of time where I did have a parent at home all the time, which was amazing and rare, I found out, because it was kind of like you were saying, both parents are kind of working, and they do sell that as the American dream, right? Like get the biggest house you can, many cars as you can, and you kind of realize when you start really spiritually maturing that none of this stuff really, these things don't really matter. Like it just, I don't know, they're just things to me. I think you know what I mean.
Yeah, there. I mean, we live in a physical world, so interacting with physicality is fine. It's just when it becomes primary.
Right.
The problem is when it becomes an ego-driven. When the material becomes primary, it becomes more important than the spiritual. That's when the problem, because you'll gain a dollar, but you'll lose the world, and it's not worth it, right? Versus when you understand that it's all important and the growth is important, and when we're able to understand certain things, then we could even experience a physical reality which is beyond our wildest dreams, which could include being able to travel tremendous distances in a very small period of time, or exploring more of the universe, having some technologies, but for good,
Yeah.
like maybe teleportation, things that you see in like the movies and Star Trek and stuff, stargates and teleportation, but for good purposes,
Right.
for purposes of exploration, um, rather than just creature comforts.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, obviously,
Or to control people. I mean, that's what they do too. With you got to pay for hydro, you got to pay for your heat, you got to pay for your water. All things
yeah.
that I think that we should just have. I mean, I don't. It's crazy that we're paying for water and stuff. Like it's just like wow, you know,
Yep.
and very
It's because
interesting.
again, we believe in that notion of authority, and we believe that the few have the right to rule over the many, and they get to proportion all the resources.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, you're absolutely right. That's where people's mindset, most people's mindset is at. As I was saying earlier, a lot of people I talk to, they can't fathom a world without government. They're like they really do believe it would just turn into what they think is anarchy, and I have to correct them that that's not what anarchy means. So that's another thing I speak to people about, because once again, as I was saying earlier, David, they twist the words and they put different meanings on them in people's minds, which is anarchy is one of them. And as I was saying, Satanism is another one I find with there are a lot of people have they just don't look at it the right way. And then natural law, as I was saying at the beginning, is another one that's a big one. They automatically go to Darwinism, survival of the fittest. So I mean, that's the battle that I'm against, is that people just have the wrong, they don't even know what they're really talking about, because it's been polluted and twisted into something it isn't.
Yep. And now you and I and others who are doing the great work, um, we're trying to stave off the deluge. I mean, we're doing the right thing because it's the right thing, even if there's no guarantee that we can overcome this. There is a aspect of realism of just how much of a number these psychopaths have been able to do and how long they've been at it. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
they've literally been at it probably for thousands, if not tens of thousands of years. So we have to be realistic in understanding what we're up against. But the right thing is the right thing. And if we ever want to experience a reality that's other than this reality, there is really only one way out. There really is only one master key, and that is to understand the nature of reality itself. So that's why I do what I do, and I think, I'm able to sleep well at night knowing that
Me too.
even if it's not a guarantee that we can come out of this, at least I'm doing the right thing.
Right.
So
Me too.
that allows me to sleep well at night, if
Yeah,
nothing
me
else.
too. I mean, we're doing our part and we're doing what we can, yeah, you definitely can sleep a lot better at night when you know that you are, and it's powerful. And I'm just checking time. I don't want to keep you too much longer. I know that I could talk to you for hours. I really could. I'm really enjoying this. Very powerful, I think, what we're discussing, and I hope people get a lot from it. And it opens, like you were saying, that door a little bit. Even if it opens it a crack for people that maybe have never heard what we're talking about. I do get new listeners all the time. Just maybe it's enough of a
Fantastic.
crack to start looking at what we're talking about. Look into real natural law, what it really is, not what they're telling you, not Darwinism, not survival of the fittest, law of the jungle, real natural law. And I woke up from Mark Passio's work. I mean, if you want to go that route, it's an aggressive route at times. I mean, he's very, and it's not for everybody, but it's worked on me. So, but there's a lot of people out there on even on the One Great Work Network. Like I said, there's 50 over 50 content creators. We're talking about what David and I are talking about, and all different ways of teaching it. So you'll find somebody that you resonate with, guaranteed. And just look into it, and start looking into this because that's the only way out, as David is bringing up, is to start doing things the right way. But I wanted to kind of ask you if I could keep you for a few more minutes. A big thing that I connected to over especially the last few years, because I got out and finally got out. I was renting in an apartment, so I was kind of stuck in the city, and then I got a house, and I'm more out where there's nature and stuff like that. Huge difference in my life when I started connecting with nature again, like actually getting out and connecting with it. Do you think they're trying to sever that connection with people from nature, and also nature isn't outside, but also our true nature inside?
Yeah, I mean, is that a trick question? Of course they are. I mean, that's one of the main things that they have to do is disconnect. You know, if you want to make a human being feel less the valuable than they are, then one of the main things that has to be done is to try to disconnect us from our nature.
Right.
And the physical nature around us is one reminder. That's why I think pretty much everybody feels naturally more at peace and more calm when we're in some kind of natural setting.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, I'm living near the ocean. I travel a lot, so people who don't know, I'll just mention briefly.
Sure.
I'm basically have a semi-nomadic lifestyle where I'm originally from the U.S., but I've been traveling, and I usually stay for a couple of months, working in either hostels or hotels. Right now, I'm staying in a hotel by the ocean, working with the owner, helping him kind of grow and
Nice.
improve things with his hotel. And then in exchange for that, I earn a little bit. And then it also gives me the space to enjoy the natural setting and keep working, keep doing the great work and really just keep investing. So, but yes, I always try to personally stay near nature, and I think it is beneficial. Having said that, if someone is in the city, people like Mark Passio who consider themselves on the front lines because they are in a very urban setting,
Right. Right.
kind of in the heart of the beast. It's going to be more difficult. There is important work to be done there. I would say if you're living in the city because you feel it's important to do that, at the very least, try to get out into nature as often as possible to refresh, because um, it's very powerful. That's why I try to record all of my videos
Yeah,
outdoors
I
in a
love that.
natural setting. That setting, the settings that you see in my videos, for those of you who watched it or if you will watch them, um, you'll see that they're almost all recorded outdoors, and that's very intentional because for me, being in that setting allows me to channel what I'm sharing more
Right.
powerfully. It allows me to connect more with the natural reality, with nature, but it also it's more relaxing. It's more
Absolutely.
peaceful.
Yeah,
Yeah.
to me it grounds me, like for sure. Like I get a grounded feeling, which I didn't even realize that that's what it was called. I've been doing it for a long time where you go barefoot and you just kind of like
Yep.
you touch the ground with a lot of people don't even do that anymore. It's like wow, like and then the power of that when you actually are connected to the earth and that ground. And then people are like, "Oh, you're talking about grounding." And I'm like, oh, "I didn't know that's what I didn't know what it was called. I didn't know what shadow work was at one time. I just always called it confronting my demons. That's what I thought it was called." And then people are like, "Oh, you mean shadow work?" So I did. I mean, I think a lot of people know what we're talking about. They may not know the language or the terms that people are using, but they get the gist of it. And I agree with you. Like, be out in nature as much as possible. And I really envy that you're by the ocean. I've never seen an ocean yet in my life.
Wow.
I know. So I mean, I really envy that. I would love to go and actually swim in the ocean or stand in the ocean or whatever. So I really envy
Where are
that.
you based out of?
I'm in Ontario, Canada.
Okay.
So in a cold area, and I
Yes.
mean, I could go to Vancouver. There's oceans there. Like I mean, so it's possible. It's doable, and I should do it because and I really that's so cool that you travel and that you go around and see a lot of different places. I think there's so much value in that because you're seeing different lifestyles. You're seeing different how and you're getting a gauge of where people from all around are. I think we kind of get caught in this echo chamber where we
Yeah.
are, and you don't see So you're seeing it from a lot of different perspectives. That's really powerful to me. Really, really cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's not necessarily for everyone, but I've really embraced it as a lifestyle, and I find that it helps me um, to continue to grow. One
Hmm.
thing I learned many years ago, like I was sharing at the beginning of the podcast, that story when I traveled to Mexico, I found that when we're traveling and we're confronting new situations, it helps us to confront ourselves more quickly because there's kind of an accelerated experiential curve where we are facing new situations more frequently than if we're in our same environment. So I
Hmm.
think there's benefit to that. I would encourage anybody, to at least travel. If they're not going to make a lifestyle out of it, that's fine. It's not for everyone, but at least every once in a while, get out there, go to a new place, even if it's not very far away. Just put yourself in new environments as often as possible and see how that helps you literally to evolve. And of course, like you were saying, the nature. Probably what I'll do, Rick, after this call is not to make anybody envious, but I'll probably go walk on the beach because we've been so connected to the technology, and I'm inside, and it's going to be a nice contrast to get outside and walk, barefoot on the sand,
Nice.
um, and just not even bring my phone or any technology with me. Literally, just me and nature.
Amazing. Yeah, I am jealous because I wish I could be there. I wish I could be there with you. It would be, yeah, incredible. But I will go. I'm the same way. After this, I'll probably go outside for a couple hours and just kind
Yeah.
of walk around my yard and just, enjoy the being outside. It's cold. I get it. But I mean, I still like to go out there and just be out there in nature. It's so powerful to me. So I get exactly what you're saying. And, amazing stuff, David. Thank you so much. I mean, it's like, I guess to wrap it up, because I know you like to wrap up on solutions. So I wanted to leave, like, what are, if somebody's just getting into this, they've never really looked into natural law, and they're kind of like, they know they got to start on the path. And I would love to focus on if you can give people some solutions and advice on how they can start their journey, maybe give them some, advice what to do, because I'd like to end on a
Yep.
positive note.
100%. Yeah. So, I mean, check in with yourself, speaking directly to the person who's watching or listening. I mean, check in with yourself that you care enough that you want to try to do something, the best of your ability to improve your own life, that of your children, if you have them, and that, of course, of the world. So, if you truly have that care, if you really want to do something, then the good news is you can start with some things that are very simple. I would encourage people to go back and read that book that I mentioned in the beginning, The End of All Evil by Jeremy Locke. If you can't afford to even buy a copy, just download a free PDF. It's available all over the internet, and just get a copy and read it. I mean, that would be step number one,
Hmm.
because when you start to acquire this new information, this new knowledge, and you really grasp it, the next steps will be shown to you. So that's why I think it's important to just take that first step. Um, Another step beyond that, I would highly recommend people who are really ready to dive in even deeper, go to YouTube or really just search online and look at Mark Passio's seminar from 2013. It's called Natural Law, the Real Law of Attraction and How to Apply It in Your Life. It's about a
Great one.
9-hour seminar, so it might take you a little while to go through the whole thing. But if there was 9 hours of your life that was worth investing in something, that would be it.
I agree.
And I can guarantee you, if you're someone that, is not completely, doesn't have a completely calcified ego and very close to new knowledge, new ways of looking at things, and you're honest with yourself, even to some degree, you're going to get something out of that. And probably again, from watching that, you'll see what comes next for you. So these these uh, these sources will teach you things, and they'll also show you what's next. Ultimately, for people wherever they're at, I mean, the formula I think is very simple. You need to become a committed student of this knowledge, of occult knowledge in general and natural law. You don't have to become like a member of a particular group or anything. You just need to commit to learning it, and then start applying it in your own life. Start to apply it for yourself to overcome your own struggles, maybe health challenges that you're facing. And then once you've gotten to a certain point, then you can start to speak about it to other people and teach it, because the voice is what's going to free humanity. Our ability to share information through speech and through written word this is what's going to allow us to be free. This is what's going to allow us to amplify this.
Right.
But ultimately, this knowledge, this needs to be returned to the domain of common sense. Once that happens, it's game over for the bad guys. No, they're not going to be. The psychopaths will not be able to rule over humanity if humanity gets this stuff. That's basically the bottom line.
I agree, 100%, and that is so well said. I totally agree with you, David, what you're saying, and I would also say my little bit of recommendation is to start taking a little bit of time with yourself every day, which what I make sure I do every day. I try to call it shadow work, whatever you want to call it. I just sit with myself, quiet, and I no devices, no TV, no nothing, no distractions, just me and myself in a quiet place. And a lot of people do that in a quiet room. People do it outside. I've talked to people who do that going on a walk or going into the nature. There's many different ways. Just make sure you don't have any distractions and
Yep.
no technology around you, and just sit with yourself and start asking
Yep.
yourself the tough questions. And the key is to be brutally honest with yourself. Are you living a moral life, truly? Or are you doing actions, or are you maybe in a profession that is taking people's rights away? These are just questions you have to ask and be brutally honest with yourself. Are you contributing to the problem, or are you trying to end the problem? And I totally agree with David. Once you start looking into this, the cult of knowledge that we're talking about, the path kind of comes forward and leads you, if you know what I mean. And that would be my advice: is to take the time with yourself and start doing the work on yourself. I think that was a game changer for me, for sure. So that would be my advice. You know,
Fantastic.
yeah,
Yeah,
awesome.
and then reach out to either Rick or myself, or get involved in the community, because
Right.
we're here to help each other, obviously.
Yep, I agree. And there's a great community, like I said, the One Great Work Network, over 50 content creators there. They're easy to get a hold of. That's how I got a hold of David here, to be quite honest. I mean, it's not easier than that. I mean, if you find somebody on there, they're on YouTube that you really connect with, and you connect with their teachings, and you want to talk to them, trust me, guys, just reach out to them. They'll get back to you, most of them, and you can have a discussion like this. Doesn't have to be videotaped, or it doesn't have to be on a podcast or anything. It can just be one-on-one, as by yourselves, and you can start down. Really, I've met so many incredible people, David, like yourself, over the last year. There's a lot of people out there that care, and they get what's going on, and they are trying to make a difference. I think the elite, these dark psychologists out there, they want you to believe you're so alone, and that you're the only one feeling
Yep.
this way. And that's the biggest lie they're putting on people. We do have power. There is people out there doing good, and that is what they fear. you know
Yep. But we also, by the same token, we do. It is important that people keep activating. So if you
yes,
are listening to this and you're just kind of consuming all this, that's step number one. But that's not enough. If you really
absolutely.
want to live in a free world, your active participation is required. And so that's why also getting involved with the community will support that, because when you are surrounded by like-minded people, and you have some helping hands, and it's not just all you, then it makes it easier. But that's not an excuse to not take action. I mean, we still need people to activate and to speak the truth and to share knowledge, and to basically be activists. This is a requirement if we want to be free.
Absolutely. I totally agree. So amazing. Thank you so much, David. I want to give you the last couple minutes. Do you want to let everybody know where they can find your work, what you're working on next, what plans you got coming up? And I will promise to make sure I leave links in the description, guys, so you can find all of David's work. But David, the floor is yours for the next couple minutes to let people know where they can find all your stuff.
Awesome. Thanks again, Crypt Rick. So, as you mentioned, I'm also part of the One Great Work Network, which is onegreatworknetwork.com. So that's one place you can find me, along with all the other content creators. I do have a profile there, and I post all of my videos that I create. My own website is called freedomvibe.art, freedomvibe.art.art. I consider myself an artist, in addition to considering myself a teacher and many other things. That's one of the many hats that I wear. I value and appreciate the artistic side of life very much. And so the freedomvibe.art is a site where I post all of my own creations, but I also cross-post some of the most valuable creations from others, not just people that I've collaborated with, but just other content that has really made a difference to me. It's basically content that I personally curate. So check it out. You'll probably get a lot of great insights from watching the videos. All the materials I share are always free, just like on the One Great Word Network. There's no paywall. There's no um, membership to get access to all this knowledge. And of course, I cross post on many different platforms. You can find me on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Float, Gab, 3Speak, Minds, MeWe. I'm sure I'm leaving a few out, LinkedIn, and others. I mean, literally, I think I'm on 20. I think I cross post to almost 20 different
Wow.
platforms,
That's
just to get the word
crazy.
out.
That's
Yep.
amazing. Like, wow, that's a lot, man. Awesome. I like incredible, David. Thank you so much. And you are always welcome back, my friend. I would love to have you back and do a part two.
100%.
I really enjoyed this. I was looking forward to this for the last couple of weeks. So thank you so much. And keep up doing the amazing work that you're doing. I know I'm going to keep following your work and checking out. I'm looking forward to checking out your upcoming videos. So thank you so much, David, for what you do. You have no idea how much I appreciate you and value the work you're doing. So keep it up, my friend. You're doing amazing.
Thanks so much, Crypt Rick. It's been a real pleasure. And yeah, let's definitely do it again.
All right. Thank you, my friend. And I will talk to you very soon.
Take care.
All right. Take care, my friend. Well, there you have it. Another amazing interview. Oh my God. I really enjoyed that conversation with David, guys, as you can tell. And I think there was some great conversation and great information passed there and discussed and what's going on in our world. I just kind of wanted to like not get too heavy in this one. Uh, Kind of just for new people if they kind of come across and want to check it out. And I will definitely get David back for a part two. I promise. And we're gonna really, I think, then dive in. I would like to really dive in with David and talk about what natural law is. What are principles? What is objective morality? And really get into that topic. But I just thought it'd be really cool to get him on here and just to let you guys introduce him to you guys and about and all the work that he's doing. As you saw, he's on so many platforms, which is incredible. And yeah, definitely check out the links in the description. I'll leave it for the One Great Work Network. I'll leave it for David's YouTube channel and for his website. And then from his website, you can find all of his other links, as he said. So I'll make sure that that's in the description for you guys. And really check out his work, guys. Amazing. I love his videos. I really enjoy them, and especially because he's outside, which is something I noticed right away when I was watching all of his content. It's like, wow, he really does it from outside, and it just gives it a different feel than maybe sitting in a podcast studio like this. So I just think he's really getting a good, doing a great thing by going outside, which is something I may think about doing maybe in the spring is maybe doing a show or two, excuse me, maybe doing a show or two once in a while outside, out on, out in my yard where I sit and do a lot of my shadow work and just really sit and enjoy nature. It might be really cool to actually do a show like that, guys, where I'm just kind of sitting outside. So his work has inspired me to do that, like maybe try just switching it up a little once in a while and doing just a show, even a little show. Doesn't have to be a long one, just from sitting outside in nature. Just a different feel and really cool. So awesome, guys. Thank you so much for taking the time to come and check out another one of my interviews. I appreciate all of you who come and support me. You have no idea how much your support means to me. I just can't thank you guys enough. And please, if you want to check out my radio show, as I said, I will leave a description or link in the description like I always do. And you can just find it at freedomslips.com, which is at Revolution Radio. And like I said, Jonathan's an amazing co-host, Jonathan Wright. You can check out his channel, which is Nothing New Under the Sun. Check that out. I mean, he's got great stuff going on over there too, and I really enjoy doing our show on Saturday nights. So I did let everybody know at the beginning of the interview or at the show all the links in that. So definitely check that out, guys. And radio to me, I keep saying is kind of overlooked in my opinion because as I was saying earlier, it definitely, at least I don't have all the censored. Like I don't have to be worried about being censored like I am here on other platforms. You gotta be so careful as to what you're saying and the topics because if they, anything that they don't deem to be truthful or what they like, they'll pull your video down and then they go after your channel, which has happened to a lot of content creators that I know. Some of them are on their, like, their third channels. So that's why I do like the radio aspect of it, but I really enjoy the video aspect like this too. So I love both, and I think there's a place for both. I think that it just hits a broader audience, and because I do know some people I've talked to that like listening to the podcast in kind of like radio format. They're not really, they can't really watch video format because they're at work or they're doing stuff around their house, so they enjoy just the audio aspect of it. And then I've talked to people on the other side that like the video aspect, the interaction of the video. So I think there's definitely room for both, and so that's why I try to really focus on those two. So check it out, guys. I have great guests on my radio show every week. Jonathan and I have great guests on, lots of great information going out and important information, especially now with the world going as crazy it is. People are just, really in a state of fear and uncertainty and not really sure what's going to happen. And I get it. I get that they're in that fear, but there is a way out of it. And so, that's all I'm going to say. I don't want to babble on too much. You guys have been kind enough to stick through this whole video. So thank you guys once again. And I will be back very soon with another great interview. I got lots of interviews actually lined up for this week. So I will keep them coming for you guys and talk to you very soon. So take care, guys, and stay safe. Look after each other. Love each other. And I will see you soon. Peace, guys.
Are you interested in the paranormal? Murder mysteries, cryptocurrency, and thought-provoking interviews? Then check out Crypt Rick's I've Been Thinking on YouTube, or every Monday night at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Studio A at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. Welcome to the Crypt.